What is something you tried once but will most likely never do again? Story 1. Clicked View My Rate for a mortgage home equity loan on one of those brokerage sites. I got 167 calls in 2 hours. Took a month to stop getting calls no matter how many numbers I blocked. Story 2. Trusting either of my parents with a secret. They always go and snitch to the other while blowing it completely out of proportion. Asterisk, asterisk, edit. For everyone who said that OFAC married people would divulge the secret because of trust and all, I agree. My parents have always tried their best for me every time, and I acknowledge that. However, as a young teen, I wasn't someone who kept a secret from them in general. While I dealt with my own, I would end up telling them later about what happened. This particular instance was about me coming out when I discovered I had feelings for my best friend, and I came out to my dad, who is generally a lot more sympathetic towards these situations. My mom, however, wasn't, so I asked him to keep it under wraps until I was ready to tell her. By the end of the same day, my mom barged into my room screaming at me and hitting herself, literally, and saying, "Where did I go wrong?" over and over. My dad joined her side and started yelling at me for making her cry, which I knew would happen because my dad always backs up my mom more than me, which makes sense in any other situation except this one. Anyway, it scarred me for life, and I have deep-rooted trust issues now. Story 3. Leaving my bags in a rental in Europe. Happened to both me and my best friend. A lot of rental companies turn out to take advantage of the tracking system. They show up to the car when you're not there, take pretty much everything valuable and flee. Known scam where you won't be able to win. Story 4. Bring our old dogs on an overnight hotel stay. My husband and I were going to a concert then, running a half marathon the next day in the same city. Rather than board them, we found a hotel that allowed dogs. We were so distracted by both the concert and the half marathon that they appeared miserable the whole time. They were stuck in an unfamiliar place, alone. We didn't have time to walk them for long, and when we did walk them, we were next to a busy road which scares one of our dogs. The elevator for the hotel was also scary for the same dog. So was the music at the restaurant where we ate dinner. The bass sounded like thunder. We were selfish. We should have boarded them instead. Now we know better. Story 5. Lorazepam. Got it for my severe anxiety, and it works like wonders for me. Before the pull, extremely anxious, scared, shaking, sweating, hyperventilate. After the pill, calmness. All negative thoughts went away. Now, doesn't that sound great? Yes, it does. Too much. You become addicted to that shit so easily. You ask yourself, why should I work my ass through all this therapy when a little pill makes it all go away? So I won't take them anymore, even if my psychiatrist prescribed them to me. I have them in my apartment for extreme cases, like losing someone in my family or something. But I will not take them in my normal life anymore. I can do it without. Story 6, an academic achiever. Side note, I'm Asian. Was 4th place in a batch of 60, 70 students for a foreign language curriculum, Mandarin, in a country that didn't use it because it was mildly interesting to me at the time. I was 7. Instead of telling me that I did a great job and that they were proud of me, my relatives said, if you studied harder, you would have taken 1st place. That immediately killed any and all interest I had in academics. The effort wasn't worth it if nobody was going to appreciate it. I couldn't care less about some arbitrary number given to me based on my ability to memorize books word for word after all. Thinking back on it, I was quite the feisty little shit and definitely a menace to society. Story 7. A big outdoor music festival in the South in the summer. I went to Ozfest a long time ago in Virginia. I ended up getting dehydrated and having a horrible headache. Because they wouldn't let anyone bring bags inside, I could find no one with any aspirin. I ended up walking out 2 songs into Tool's set. Guar used to do a festival in Richmond every year that I always wanted to go to, but not in August. Story 8. Using a paint sprayer to spray my baseboards after I put them up. I did this over the summer, during my basement reno, as my buddy couldn't stop talking about how well his turned out, and they do look good, but holy fuck, what a colossal pain in the ass. You have to protect everything you don't want paint on, because the paint atomizes and is everywhere while you spray. There's literally a fog in the air. This process is hugely onerous, and one minor fuck-up, and you've left a misty triangle of paint on your carpet. My basement area is around 500 skft, and I had around 300 linear feet of baseboards and window door trim and jam to do. It took me 2 days to prep everything, which I still fucked up, and the actual spraying took exactly an hour for 2 coats, 30 mins x2, with about 30 minutes x2 of setup and cleanup time on each end. The cleanup is awful as well. The results are good, but I'm not sure they're worth the effort. Story 9, caving. Went with my best friend at a state park in Kentucky when I was 14. Went with 2 local teens we met on our trip, and they were pretty experienced with it. Took us about 4 hours round trip. Had to crawl through a few keyhole passages that were so small we had to go one at a time. At one point I started crying and refused to keep going, but then I decided to crawl through and keep going because I didn't want to wait there alone for them. I had never been so happy to see sunlight again when we finished. At the time I was young and naive and didn't really understand how risky it was. Looking back, I can't believe how stupid I was, LOL. I will never do that again. Story 10. Boarding a cat. 10-day trip and I couldn't find anyone to look after her, so I left her with a boarding place highly recommended by a family member. She lost 25% of her body weight and wound up in end-stage kidney failure. The vet did everything they could, but there was no saving her. I'll pass on any trip before I'll board a cat. Never again. Story 11. Boarding a cat. 10-day trip and I couldn't find anyone to look after her, so I left her with a boarding place highly recommended by a family member. She lost 25% of her body weight and wound up in end-stage kidney failure. The vet did everything they could, but there was no saving her. I'll pass on any trip before I'll board a cat. Never again. Story 12. When I was much younger, me and my wife went to a timeshare pitch for a free flight. We kept telling them we couldn't afford it and kept getting passed on to another salesman. They were all nice enough until the last guy, who was the main guy, and he chewed us out for wasting everyone's time and not taking charge of our future. After getting lectured on how to live my life, I told my wife, regardless of what is being offered, I will never go to another timeshare presentation. It has been 25 years and I have kept my word. Story 13. Skydiving. The whole climbing out on the wing with someone strapped to your back, trying to jump and arch your back is too stressful. We tumbled once or twice before we straightened out due to the guy yelling in my ear to arch my back. Once we were falling correctly, it was pretty sweet. Easy for things to go wrong, though, just not worth the risk, Glad I did it once, though. Story 14. We were outside playing, and this kid's uncle had real nunchucks. Without his uncle's knowledge, the kid brought them outside to brag about how he was a kung fu master or some shit. He wanted us to see who could swing them the best. My sister tried first and quickly decided she was done when she accidentally hit her knuckle. Nah, I'm out. I had experience swinging shit around, but they were so heavy. I was doing it slowly and hit the side of my stomach once. That shit hurt, and I had the same thoughts as my sister. I put it down and never picked up another pair. I went back to swinging jump ropes like whips. Kid ends up almost breaking his skull doing the behind-the-back swing. That's how we got caught. He's the only one that got in trouble, though, because we all told him that he was going to hurt himself. Real weapons hurt. Who would have thought besides South Park writers? Story 15. Go to concerts, festivals. Did it once with a friend of mine who is a huge metalhead and loves concerts. So I said I'll give it at least once chance before I judge it. Did it, and I've hated every second of it. Way too loud, way too many people, and after getting kicked in the head by stage divers around 6 times, I've decided it is time to get out of the crowd and go to a more quiet area until everything was over and we could go home. Story 16. Getting tased. I taught MMA and self-defense and had a guy who was a security guard that offered to do a class on tasers. At the end, he asked for volunteers. Worst 5 seconds of my life. And I've been hit by 2 cars as a pedestrian. I now have a fear of electricity thanks to it and will never mess with a police officer who pulls out his taser. It was an informative class, and the company he got his from has stuff that's even worse, like a Claymore one for riot control. They actually actively look for test subjects, and he was signed up to get tased for 30 seconds, get rest, and then repeat for IDK how many intervals in order to get a free taser. 11/10 would never do that and do again. Story 17. Took a shot of dishwashing liquid after losing a bet when I was about 17. 07. Besides feeling like shit initially, I then had the most fucked up sleep I've ever had later that night. Not sure if I was dreaming or awake and full-on hallucinating, but shit got wild and I woke up absolutely drenched in sweat. Story 18. I once tried a DIY home haircut during a particularly impulsive phase. I thought it would be a fun way to save some money, but it ended up looking like a disaster zone. There were uneven patches, awkward angles, and a lot of regret. It was a lesson in humility and a reminder that some tasks are best left to the professionals. Since then, I've happily returned to my trusty barber. Story 19. Work in K-12 public education. I worked in K-12 public education for 12 years. Now I work in medicine. I will never go back. I still have PTSD about it, LOL. I get a better salary, work-life balance. I'm not emotionally drained. I'm actually emotionally available for my partner because I'm not overly exhausted. I can see the difference I'm making, and I actually help people. I am in better health, better shape, better mental health, and love what I do. I was even out of the classroom and worked in leadership roles, so it's not just the classroom. But yeah, never going back. Story 20. I completed a spicy wings challenge. It was a great and motivating experience, but I'll never do anything like that again. Even when someone offers me something spicier than Tabasco sauce, I turn it down these days. I feel like I satiated my urge to eat spicy foods to prove my manliness. Story 21. Went out on a large lake at night on a small boat after day drinking. Had to go below to get a blanket for someone and ended up polluting the head until we were safely back at the dock. I'm fine if I can see the horizon, but not so much if I can't. A different time, I was at a party where the host discovered fuzzy navel, so that's about all she had on hand. No pollution like above, but the hangover was special. Vodka and peach schnapps. Asterisk, ugh, asterisk. I can guarantee I'll not be doing either of these things again. Story 22. My roommate had an ice bath on our back deck. He kept calling me a pussy for not doing it in the middle of winter. So one winter morning here in Pittsburgh, I punched through the layer of ice on top of it and dunked myself in the freezing cold water. While it woke me right up and felt refreshing, I was so cold for the longest time and thought to myself, I don't ever need to do this shit again. Story 23. Hot air balloon. I loved it. It was beautiful and so peaceful. However, it's very weather dependent. You have almost no control over where you go. We ended up landing in a mud pit despite the operator's best efforts, and you need to get up at the absolute crack of dawn to do it. It is also a very pricey endeavor. It was great, but once is enough for me. Story 24. Give away my Nintendo Switch to someone. One of my friends at the time took a liking to my Switch, and I bought myself a new one because when Let's Go came out, they did a Pokemon bundle Switch, and I always regretted never getting the Pikachu 3DS XL. Anyway, I gave them for free my old Switch along with a copy of the Breath of the Wild, and even did the game share thing with them. They were happy, but you would have thought at least after a few years, they would have played with me once, but they never did. My thought at the time was it would be better to give it to someone, rather than it sit and gather dust like my old DS Lite did when I got a 3 Deciskins, but now I wish I kept it since it was an original model, and I could have modded it. TLDR, giving someone a Switch to get an extra friend to play games with doesn't work. XD. Story 25. Go to an NFL game. Went to a Pats game back in 1996 in December. Got good seats from a scalper just after kickoff, about 50 rows up in the lower decks and in the 40-yard line. It was their old stadium and the Jumbotron wasn't a thing yet anyway. It was cold. You couldn't see what was happening. And the food, beer, while not as bad as now, was expensive. I'm much happier and more comfortable at home in the Lazy Boy. Story 26. Sweet potato casserole. It is not a thing where we live, but my dad had it at American Thanksgiving, so my daughter Googled it and wanted to try it because she loves roasted sweet potatoes. We served it with Christmas dinner and no one ate it. Only 3 people tried it. It was horrendous. Story 27. Paragliding. Did it in Turkey off a 6K plus FT cliff. You literally just lay your parachute out behind you and sprint down the hill and off the edge. It was amazing views and so much fun, but man, the prices have shot up lots and a lot of the providers there are saying it's not profitable anymore due to insurance prices and Turkish inflation. Story 28. Skateboard tricks. I used skateboard kind of not really when I was a teenager. I didn't know any tricks but would ride around my neighborhood and whiz around the skate park. One day, I tried to grind. Got the board on the railing and instantly fell off and landed on my back on the rail. Luckily, I was fine, but the experience shook me up so bad that I stopped skateboarding completely. Story 29. Angels Landing at Zion National Park. It's worth doing it once for the view, but never again. The type of people that hike it are unprepared, unpredictable, and inexperienced, and there are way too many of them. The people are more dangerous than the terrain, which is already fairly dangerous. Story 30. Go on one of those giant cruises. Not because I'm afraid of boats or of water. I just never want to be trapped with that many people anywhere. I know they are wonderful for some people. I'm not one of those people. The best part for me was in my cabin where it was cold and dark and I could watch the ocean alone. Story 31. Skydiving with a defective parachute? Sorry, I couldn't help myself. Foie gras. It's expensive, looks awesome, has the mouthfeel of a bunch of snot. It was so disgusting it took everything in my power not to vomit all over the table. We had gone to a very upscale restaurant. We did chef's choice, and it came out worst choice ever. Story 32. Not just once, but when I was a kid, I loved eating this Philippine egg called balut that was an undeveloped duck embryo. Could see the bill, eyes, feathers, everything, but it was all soft and easy to eat. I was hooked on it. Now that I am older, I can't bring myself to eat another ever again. Also, I was dared to take a shot of Everclear once. I'll never do that again. It wouldn't surprise me if I damaged my throat or stomach doing it. Story 33. Ziplining. My partner and I were at a place where you had to jump at the end onto a hay bale. For me, that part was terrifying. The ziplining itself was okay, but nothing special. My partner banged his arm while ziplining alongside me and needed medical attention. We were allowed to have 2 runs, but we gave up after 1. My brother, who was at the resort with us, could hear me yelling as he walked by and was glad he wasn't going to do it. I'm glad I tried it. Now I don't need to ever try it again. Story 34, indoor climbing. It was an activity that I found interesting before trying it, but found absolutely zero spark in actually doing. I've fallen for more than a couple of physical activities like mountain biking and even disc golf, as they woke up something in me, but to my surprise, I simply didn't feel the because it's there aspect of getting to the top of a man-made series of grips and whatnots. And thinking about it, I do believe outdoor rock climbing would not be motivating to me either. Shame as such. The scene seemed very friendly, and it would be something you can do even during a snowstorm or something. Story 35, jumping with parachutes down to the earth, just leaving everything else behind. This is what I was craving for because I thought it would be fun and a unique experience, which it was, but I didn't anticipate the frightening aspect to it. The fall was rapid, and although the scenery was spectacular, I was mostly wishing for it to end. I was ecstatic once I was on the ground, though it became apparent to me that I am not particularly an adventure seeker. I am happy that I accomplished this, but I have to say that once was quite enough. Story 36, conventions. First one I went to was a lot of fun and I had a blast throughout, but going to it the year after didn't really capture the same magic as last time. That was 7 years ago, and I've not been back since. Nothing against the convention staff themselves. Huge credit to all involved, making both of them wonderful experiences / mini vacations. I just won't be going again. I don't think they're really for me. At the very least, I can say I've been to one. It's been crossed off the list. Story 37, scuba diving. I have a fear of immersing my head in water. I can't take a shower without knowing I have towels nearby to wipe my face in case it accidentally hits the shower flow. So I had a panic attack trying to immerse off Jeju Island in South Korea the first time. The instructor managed to calm me enough so that I could do the full 20 minutes underwater. He got me just to put my goggles on top of the water, no face touching. And look, I was amazed at the plants and fish I saw immediately, enough that I kind of floated down and realized I could breathe. It was okay. Beautiful reef, amazing experience, recommend to anyone? Still can't stand water in my face, never doing it again. Story 38, attended a PGA event. I was DD, so I wasn't drinking. And watching people golf was mostly lame, as it just made me want to play. We finally posted up on the rope at 18 where we saw Tiger Woods drop a 20-foot putt to win, which was, I believe, his only win after the divorce, Chevron at Sherwood CC in 2018. But in person, golf was a bit of a snore for me. Story 39. I went through a horrible breakup in 2018. I have a terrible fear of heights, but decided doing something crazy might help my depression. I took an AFF class, climbed to 12K feet in an airplane, climbed out on the wing, and jumped out of a plane by myself. 2 instructors jump out with you to help as well. It was so intense and exhilarating. I floated down to the ground after pulling my chute and steering around for a few min by myself, 4,000 feet in the air. Very moving experience. There's no way in hell I'd ever in my life do it again. It was terrifying. I do watch a lot of skydiving videos, though.